All right, well, hello everyone. This video is for the end of our second full week of online learning. Today is Friday, April 3rd. Hope you guys have had a good week. Couple quick things. Again, to wrap up our week, you're to watch this video. We're going to talk about faith, what faith isn't in just a moment, and what faith is. Also for Monday at 4 p.m., your assignment. So this isn't technically weekend homework. This is work that I want you to have done by 4 p.m. Monday, is to read chapters 11 and 12 of Voyage of the Dawn Treader. Part of the next quiz we're going to be having next week will be based on those chapters. Okay, first thing I thought I would share is just a couple really cool photos that I found online of Pope Francis. So as you guys know, Italy has really had a difficult time with this virus. They've been hit and impacted a lot worse than our country. So please keep praying for all of our brothers and sisters in the faith over in Italy. This is a cool picture of Pope Francis over in the Vatican having a prayer service in front of an empty audience. So normally he has this is St. Peter's Square. There's so many people around. You can see him there praying. And he also had a time of adoration. It was just him out there alone before the Blessed Sacrament. And you can just see how empty the square is. I mean, if you've ever been or someday see it, it's a massive square. And to see him just having him and his assistant, Monsignor Marini, praying alone in front of no one else other than being united with the world in prayer. There's one more picture there. I just thought this is really cool, just to show, even though we're going through these difficult times where we're all isolated, that not even the Pope can have his normal audiences in his square over in Rome, that we can all be united in prayer. And so maybe just a little bit of a challenge to you guys today to continue to unite ourselves to the Lord and to each other, the church, in our prayers for the world. So just thought that was cool. So the next 2 weeks, what we're going to be covering is faith, what faith is, how faith is our response to what God has revealed. And then we're going to talk about that revelation. Okay, so we're talking about faith. What is it? How does faith lead us to becoming Christ's followers? And how is faith connected to religion, the practice of the faith? And then we're going to talk about what exactly Jesus Christ revealed about God. Okay, that's super important that we understand what actually did Jesus do? What actually did he teach and reveal as the Son of God, as the most important revelation in all of the Bible? What did he reveal to us about God? Really, really important. But first, let's talk about faith. So faith is a word that's really tossed around a lot. You have people say you just have to have faith, or, oh, well, I'm a member of the Catholic faith, or there's so many different uses for that word. It's a virtue. It's also kind of an adjective that's used. It's a descriptor. It's kind of a word that's used a lot, but I don't think we necessarily know always what we mean by when we use the word faith. So today, in this short video, I'm going to talk about what faith is not, before we talk next week about what faith is. So faith in God and what he has revealed is not, first and foremost, it's not this sort of blind belief. It's not this kind of superstitious sort of belief, the same thing as having faith that Santa Claus or Bigfoot is real, or having irrational faith that somehow today I'm going to win $1,000 or win the lottery, or having faith that something really unrealistic is going to happen. Having faith is not just kind of being superstitious. The person who has a blind faith, that if you see this picture on the right, that has a blind faith that something's going to appear to magically catch his foot as he steps off the cliff, that'd be blind faith or superstition, and that's not what we mean by faith. It's not this kind of vague belief that something irrational is just going to magically happen as long as we believe. That's not what we mean by faith. Faith also is not opposed to science or reason. So what I mean by that is science, reason. There are a lot of things in this world that we can discover. It's amazing what talents we have. There are a lot of things in this world that we can just come to understand and discover on our own. A lot of your classes here at St. Michael are basically that, where you are practicing and exercising, learning about things like gravity or human body, or an anatomy class, or biology, or chemistry. You're learning the way the world works, how the world works, and the things we can discover about the world. What we learn from those classes should not be opposed to what faith has revealed. So faith won't challenge us, won't challenge or contradict our reason directly. It will challenge our ability to understand. It will challenge our ability to go beyond our reason. As I mentioned, you find out a lot of things in your other classes, these wonderful truths about the way the world works, the way the world that God created happens to be, the truths of math, the truths of science, truths like gravity, or I'm just trying to think of some other examples. The fact that zebras have stripes, all of these things that we can discover. Whatever we discover by the sciences won't be opposed to what faith and to what God has revealed, to which we respond in faith. A grave error that we still see really common today is this idea called skepticism. Skepticism is this, I just call it this persisting refusal to believe or have faith. No matter what you try to present to me as evidence, I'm going to question that. No matter what, even if you present me the best possible evidence in the world, I'm going to question everything that you say. Even if it's really good evidence, I'm still going to question it, and I'll never ultimately come to believe. I'm just going to continue to use my reason to push away any sort of challenge to go beyond my reason to believe in truths that God has revealed. Now, a good way to kind of demonstrate what this looks like is to look at some of the responses that you guys posted from earlier this week. So this assignment you may have questioned, why the heck am I doing this? I wanted you to write basically a paragraph where you demonstrated an obvious fact, something that to anyone in the world would be clearly true, no matter who they are. Well, I picked out a few of my favorite ones here, and I'm going to walk through them in just a moment. And I'm basically going to be the skeptic here. I'm going to question every possible little thing that could be up for doubt, to show kind of the limits of skepticism, why it's not necessarily a good idea to be a skeptic and to question everything. Okay, so Aiden Rowe put, the obvious fact I'm trying to prove is that Earth has gravity. The definition of gravity is the force that attracts a body toward the center of the Earth or toward any other physical body having mass. It's a pretty good definition. I think the best support for this is whenever we jump. We don't just fly into the air and never stop going up, but we come back down. Without gravity, we would float into space and never come back. Okay, so maybe my question as a skeptic would be, Aiden, how do we know anything is actually real at all? So like you talk about like jumping, you talk about this thing called gravity. How do we know that anything that we see around us is even real? How do we know that gravity is an actual force? Because what could actually be the case could be that none of this is real, and instead we're just a bunch of brains that are sitting in a jar of fluid to which a mad scientist is controlling our brains by a computer, simulating jumping and gravity and making us believe that it's actually happening, but it's not actually the ultimate reality. The ultimate reality is, who's to say we could all just be a bunch of brains to which we're kind of hooked up to a computer that a mad scientist is controlling and artificially simulating these experiences. So there goes my first one. Now, Lucy said that I'm proving that Birmingham, Alabama is a larger population than Mobile. The evidence that best proves this is that Birmingham is more populated than Mobile, is the people count that was last done in 2017. There's a count online that has numbers, and Birmingham is at 212,461, and Mobile is at 194,000. Also, Mobile has more population than a bunch of other cities in Alabama. With that evidence, therefore, Birmingham is the most populated. Now, Lucy, have you ever considered the fact that there is such a thing as Birmingham bias? How do we know that the people who are doing the population count aren't from Birmingham, or that they have a bias to show that Birmingham is the better city because it has more people? And have you actually counted the people yourself? Have you actually gone through and done a count? I don't think we can believe this study because it's possible that Mobile could have more people. It's just that the people who are running this study happen to be from Birmingham and are very much fans of Birmingham because they want to make sure that they get more people and more recognition in the state. So there's my second one. And then the water debate. So Margie tried to point out that the obvious fact I want to prove is that water is wet. So my first evidence is that wet is a property that practically all liquids have. Since water is a liquid, water must at least have the property of wet. Max made a great comment. Max kind of played the skeptic. I'm not quite so sure if Max intended to do this, but he came off quite nicely as a good skeptic. So Max, skeptic, says, if something can be wet, it also has to be dry. Can water be dry, Margie? No, it obviously cannot. I also would toss something in and say that, Margie, if sorry, I'm picking on you, by the way. If we isolated water into an isolated molecule, which is H2O, so if we just isolated the two hydrogen and one oxygen molecule away from all of the other water particles, we wouldn't have wetness because it wouldn't touch other water molecules, which is how water becomes wet. So water in itself doesn't have the property of being wet. There goes my skeptic thought for that one. And then last, Sam Murray. The obvious fact that I'm trying to prove is that everyone will die at some point. If someone were immortal, we wouldn't know until they died. But if they proved they were immortal by dying, then they weren't immortal. Shower thoughts of the day. I'm not sure what shower thoughts of the day are, but maybe, Sam, have you considered that death may not actually be death? Death could just be a moment where we don't really die, but we obviously don't know that until we die, but it could just be a moment where we get reincarnated. How do you know that death is actually death and not reincarnation? You can't prove that death actually ends you. It could be the case that reincarnation is a thing. Or it could be the case that death is death, but we ultimately can't know. So instead, I'm not really going to believe that death is actually real. Okay, so maybe you're a little bit annoyed at some of that because really the problem with skepticism is that we can question absolutely anything we wanted to. We can even question, as I mentioned in Aiden's example, we can even question that the reality around us is real or not. We can even question that whether the world actually exists or not. I've spent enough time in philosophy classes and I've heard some really crazy theories from skeptics that basically question absolutely everything, even the most simple facts. They question those things. So the problem with skepticism is that they're never able to accept answers and they're never able to come to a belief, because even the most obvious truths, there comes a certain point where you have to believe that they're true. So the problems with skepticism is not that it asks too many questions. It doesn't ask good enough questions, and it isn't able to arrive at a conclusion to which they can be satisfied with. So that's the problem with skepticism. There's also a problem, though, with blind faith, because on the other end of skepticism, we have people who say we shouldn't ask questions about the world. We shouldn't kind of try to discover it. We should just believe. We should just believe what the church teaches. We should just believe these things and never try to find them for ourselves. A huge part of your journey in faith is learning to ask the right questions and learning to ask good questions and trying to find the answers. And when you find the answers, to accept those answers. Jesus gave us some wonderful insight into kind of this faith that he wants to provide those answers that we're seeking. He said, "Ask and it will be given to you; seek and you will find; knock and the door will be open to you." So it's not as if we believe in a God that doesn't want to reveal the answers that we're seeking in our lives. But the problem with skepticism, again, is that even if we do get a good answer, we're never quite able to accept it. And so it's not that the skeptic goes too far, it's just they don't honestly seek to know and to accept the answer that could be presented to them. So it's important to ask good questions and to honestly seek those answers out. So those are kind of the takeaways from notes today. Again, faith is not blind belief or superstition. Also, faith is not opposed to science or reason. It's also not skepticism or mere blind belief. Okay, so that's all I have. Again, your assignment for Monday at 4 p.m. is to watch this video, take notes, and to read chapters 11 and 12 of Voyage of the Dawn Treader for next week. Have a good weekend, everyone.